Thank you so much. Yay.
Yeah, there we
Yay
go.
for progress.
Yes. And that looks where you are at the moment. Is that a space? Is that a space shuttle that you're in there? So.
It's the space station. I mean, you did talk about one interesting subject that was suggested by our audience that we talk about. In this case, something about the rumors of an Elon Musk phone that even works on Mars.
And that's which is useful because I mean we're all going to go there eventually, according to him. So, I mean,
I think many people we want to send there, maybe on a one-way ticket, but I don't know. Unless I can get a two-way ticket, I'm not sure I'm going.
yeah,
I'd
no.
love to, maybe orbit Mars and get back. That would be fun. But just, be on Mars, I don't know. It's kind of far. And, I'm the kind of person who will probably just right around the time we're leaving the Earth's orbit is going to think, oh no, I left something behind, or I brought the wrong one.
That sounds about right. I mean, in actual fact, we did get some good topics. We got QR codes and how secure are they? Can they still steal info? That's something we can look at in the future. We got NFTs. We got one which I sort of liked and I sort of snuck in, which was because it happened to me the other week. Was what do you do when your messenger, Facebook Messenger gets hacked? That was fun. And Rosanna is the winner because she was asking about Elon Musk's new cell phone, the Tesla Pi. And I mean, I think it's interesting, Alex, because is this going to be a new everyday technology for us? Because, we've been using satellite phones for, donkey's years, and they're sort of almost considered to be sort of for people that are out in the middle of absolutely nowhere and they need to get some kind of connection. But Elon Musk is bringing this into the everyday domain, isn't it, Alex?
Yes. Now, that being said, there are certain technological hurdles to overcome before something like this can actually be a practical, existing, real device. Because right now, all it is speculation. It's been speculated to come out last year. It didn't. It's been speculated to come out this year. It mightn't. So there might be or there might not be a product coming out of Tesla regarding a phone.
But he is putting his satellites up, isn't he? Because the Chinese have been complaining about it already.
He is. And like the noisy neighbor that people keep complaining about, he keeps making noise on the social media and so on, because that's one of the ways he makes some of his money. You have to recognize that every time he tweets about the value of some cryptocurrency or some technology or whatever, the markets move to what he says. It's like the neighbor that has a loud enough boombox to make your furniture shake. So I think that, the ethics of that, we can argue about that over maybe your spirit or beverage of choice. But in the meantime, if we focus on the science and technology part, he does have a network of satellites that he's been working on, which has had its ups and downs and its backers and its people who are not so keen on these satellites. But they do something very important that he's not even a pioneer on about, which is providing internet for that other 3 billion people in the planet that don't have access to the internet, because there isn't a wire or a radio signal that can reach them for whatever reason.
And the beautiful thing about it, though, surely, Alex, is yes, I mean, I can see the use of that, but I can see the advantage also for the rest of us that if we have a cell phone that can communicate via satellite, as opposed to using cell towers, we can go anywhere we want and use the phone. We won't have to have roaming charges because we're in one country or another country. Well, because we'll be continuously connected.
I wouldn't put it past the phone companies to somehow get roaming charges in there just, for just because they can.
We wouldn't need to come. We wouldn't be using them, would we? We would be using Elon Musk's company.
Technically, we wouldn't be using them, but I'm sure they would find a way to bill us for it. That being said, you remember making international phone calls in the 80s, or transcontinental radio signals. One thing you might remember is a concept called latency, which is how long it takes for your message to reach the other end and then get back to you with the answer. And right now, we're using just your regular internet technology to have a latency of under 100 milliseconds, which is usually what people can tolerate in a phone call or a video conference like the one we're having right now. The average latency for the Starlink satellite network, which is what Elon Musk is calling his satellite network, is around 45 milliseconds, but that's the average. It can go over 100 milliseconds and make conversations awkward. Either your sound speeds up or cuts out.
That's still less than a second, Alex.
It is less than a second. And to you and me, that's not a problem. But to some people, especially people used to more modern systems, that might be kind of an inconvenience. So you would probably use it for, browsing web pages or downloading a movie or, sending voice notes back and forth or video clips or whatever. That would probably be fine. But for conversations, I think it has to probably improve a little bit over the next couple of years before it becomes really viable. But the most important hurdle is the Starlink network right now requires 19 by 12 inch antennas, and it's being shrunk down to 12 by 12. If you have to carry around a 12 by 12 antenna, it's not the same phone that we might be thinking about in our heads. It's either something along the lines of a tablet, or you have to have a special box with your phone to make use of it outside of regular cell phone 5G or 4G coverage.
But Alex, this is how all technology starts up. I remember my first mobile phone in my car in London, and the handset was basically a normal handset from your telephone at home. I had a 4-foot aerial on the top of my car. I had a 4-foot aerial on the top of my house in South London. And it used to communicate. If somebody rang my phone at home, it used to send the signal to the car, to the aerial, and it used to ring. And this, Alex, was high tech. Half my boot was full of equipment, and it cost me over £1,000. And this was the tech at the time. I'm not talking about the 1980s. And you talk about telephone communications. Look, I remember when we used to tap, 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 tap and talk to the operator and say, can you please put me through to Mr. 3124? And then she would take the plugs out and she would put them in. Look, all technology starts slowly. And I think that I do think personally that the satellite technology is a great idea. I think it can work. Latency of under a second is nothing. Between here and the studio at Cool FM, between my studio and Cool FM's, we have about a 5-second latency. I have to start the program at a particular time as the lead in comes in so that we don't get a gap. So, I mean, this isn't a big deal. Less than a second latency.
It isn't. But what I'm trying to say here is don't expect to, because some news reports say that the phone might come out in 2022, that you might be able to walk into a technology store in Panama in 2023 and just buy it off the shelf. I think that, as you mentioned with your car phone, there will be some implementations going on around the world. Some people here in Panama have even signed up for the Starlink service by paying an advance fee for the antenna, and then paying around $100 a month for a 200 megabit per second connection, which I think is very reasonable. So I just hope it does better than DirecTV or Dish or any of the other satellite frequencies that are being used and technologies that are being used, because you wouldn't want to have a phone that stops working when it rains.
Well, everything here stops when it rains. I mean, I have a car and it stops when it rains because you can't see where the potholes are, or it doesn't come with an aquatic adaptation to it. So, I mean, but no, I mean, I think what I'm getting at, I think what I want to get at here is, if it was somebody else, it was somebody, look what this guy has accomplished. It's not a question of Elon Musk. Yes, he's a genius. Look what he's done with space travel. He's advanced on space travel. Look what he's done with electric cars. Look what he's done with the Boring Company. He's now building these tunnels. And this isn't fiction. This is fact. And that's what I like about Elon Musk, is he takes fiction and he turns it into fact. He's a nutter. But a lot of geniuses are nutters. I mean, that's the case. But he is somebody who manages to put into use things that people said that he would never do.
I think that's true, though I don't think of him as some people might think of him as some sort of Tony Stark or, Lex Luthor or whatever, like a scientific genius.
No, you're getting confused with Mark Hamburger, Zuckerberg,
or Jeff Bezos. No, what I think he is a genius at getting things done, business-wise, personnel-wise. I mean, he's doing a lot with space travel and electric vehicles and so on, but it's because he's hired some of the best people on the planet to actually think of these things and get them done and do things in different ways different from what we've tried before. I mean, national space programs from all over the world have thought about using reusable space rockets and components and so on for years and never got it done. But this guy managed to get the right people involved to get it done. I mean,
that's a good entrepreneur, Alex. I mean,
that's a great one.
The other one, who is somebody that I would always love to have worked for, was the Richard Branson. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is another guy. The reason he gets things done is because he comes up with the idea, he comes up with the innovation, and then what he does, he brings the people in to do it. And what I like about is not. He's not a sort of, if you like, somebody who has to look at every single detail. He brings in the people and says, this is what we're going to do. This is what I want to do. And he lets them get on and run it. And he's there to advise them and support them and to finance them to get these things done. This guy started selling records out of, at school and ended up with Virgin Records. I mean, this is the brilliance of a good entrepreneur. An entrepreneur doesn't have to do everything himself. And a good manager doesn't have to do. If you run a company, you don't do everything yourself. You bring people in to do it for you. And this is where these people are clever. But the thing is that these people have the vision. And that's what Elon Musk has. He has the vision. He thinks out of the box. He thinks about things that people say, oh, you can't do that. Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to go and do it. I have a lot of respect for him. Yeah, he's a little bit loopy. I mean, he's just sold off how much of his stock in his companies, and he's going to pay tax.
Yay for him.
So not everybody's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, he did sell off, I think it was like 0.1% or something like that of his company, and he would pay like $11 billion taxes. Yeah, that's kind of like, I don't know, cutting off your sideburns or something like that for him. It's probably not much of a bother for him. He probably makes more from just a single tweet boosting or talking smack about some cryptocurrency that he holds or doesn't hold or whatever than he pays in taxes at any point. Let's just say that regarding the Elon Musk phone, the Pi phone or whatever, I would say optimistically skeptical that he can get it done, but I really hope he does because of what it means for the rest of the industry. For example, the advancement that he has had regarding, for example, battery technology for his cars and for his factories and for his for his home batteries, the fact that you can now charge your home with your car and vice versa. I think that has given a good kick in the pants to the rest of the industry to get a lot of these things done. It's basically who gets to be the first one out on the dance floor. I don't know if you remember back in high school, nobody danced on the dance floor until somebody just, asked somebody out to dance. And then everybody went to the dance floor because nobody wanted to be the first, because nobody wanted to fail first or be the first to fail.
That sounds like me.
And I think what he has done so far, at least in the technologies that he has delved into, is to give that kind of a push to be the first one to say, I can afford to fail as many times as I want, so I'm going to try it first. Come catch me if you can. And what that does for the rest of the industry, I think that's very positive. And I hope that not only he, but Mr. Branson and everybody else who has the ability to do so does so, because that drives all of us forward in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the accomplishments with space travel. We've got Bezos, we've got Elon Musk, we've got Richard Branson working on these things. And then, NASA is now really no longer making their own rockets. They're using other people's. And this is an interesting thing that, that they were talking about this the other day, is how the space situation has changed. It's no longer just in the hands of governments. It's now becoming in the hands of the private enterprise. That's going to change a lot of things.
And if history, they say, repeats itself. I say it doesn't, but it does rhyme, in the sense that this is kind of the same as what happened with the exploration of other continents back in the 1500s. At first, it was an enterprise that could only be done by nation states. They were the ones who could afford to send people out into the unknown and so on. But then you had some private companies allied themselves with their governments to form joint ventures, some of which still exist today. So I think that's going to be probably something going forward for the next couple of decades. And then you'll finally have something that's completely private, and you'll have people just going to space by themselves and establishing colonies and so on. There's a very interesting series on Amazon Prime Video that you can watch called The Expanse, that deals with private companies going to the asteroid belt and using them to mine for minerals, and how, for example, in space, air and water are the highest paid commodity because they're so scarce in space. So, and Martian colonies are a thing and so on. So if you want to watch one vision of what the future might be like when we start exploring our solar system, I highly recommend that series called The Expanse on Amazon Prime.
Okay, that's a good one. And just for people, there is a little piece here I was just sort of reading about the Elon Musk phone. So specific sources have released new features and details that confirm that 2022 may actually see the Tesla Pi smartphone that will work on Mars using Starlink. So you don't necessarily, apparently, I don't think you do have to go to Mars to use it. I think it will work here. It says the famous Tesla, the T logo, is expected to appear in the middle blue stripe. Also, it is expected to feature a rear camera set up on the back. According to rumors, the Tesla smartphone will have a 108 megapixel main camera, a 6.5-inch 4K level screen, a Snapdragon 898 processor, a 2 terabyte storage. LifeWire reported that the expected price of the Tesla smartphone is between $800 and $1,200, which isn't overly expensive. In actual fact, I don't know that you can get much in the way of Apple phones for that kind of money.
That is correct. Now, that being said, we can't just shove physics aside. If you want a phone that can work on Mars and you want to make a phone call to somebody else on Mars, it's going to work fine, probably with a 45 millisecond latency. but Mars is about 3.5 minutes away from us at the speed of light. So we're talking about hello and then getting a hello back 6 minutes later at its closest.
But you will probably find that what will happen in the future, there is a technology that will adapt to basically leave. Once you start a conversation, you'll have a period of waiting. And then the latency will be compensated between the two parties so that in actual fact, you won't hear the latency because it'll be done, it'll be handled in a electronic way with the processor or something like that. All this stuff is feasible. I mean, it's, you know, like I said before, we always start off with something which doesn't really work properly, like my car phone that I had for £1,000 in my car. But it will come. I don't expect people rushing out to buy a Tesla phone now, but I do see them using them in 5-10 years time, when you will have a phone that works on a satellite setup and you will go anywhere in the world and you won't have to, or outside of the world for that matter, and you won't have to worry about anything. It'll just be a plan that you have and you go and work anywhere you like with it.
I think definitely we will have something like that, but it will probably be a hybrid system. So that, for example, it works indoors. It works if you're like in a third floor of a very tall building or whatever, where you don't have a view of the sky to be able to connect to any of the satellites, kind of like GPS right now. The GPS satellites work on a similar principle. So you might have a hybrid system that just uses the satellite connection when it's available, and it switches over to the local cellular towers when it's available. So that if, for example, you start traveling to a place like San Blas, for example, you have your local cellular connection like everybody else. But the moment the connection starts dropping because you're going away from coverage, then it switches over to your satellite connection and you continue just like you do with some Wi-Fi based systems right now in the US. I don't know if you've had the chance, and I think the guys at Cable and Wireless have that turned on for iPhones right now. You can switch over to Wi-Fi when you're indoors or when you're away from Cable and Wireless cell coverage, so that you don't have to pay any roaming fees no matter where you are. I have a Wi-Fi phone that works from the US. And if I am in the US, I can use the local cell phone network. But here, I just use my Wi-Fi and it's the same US number. So that's what I think is probably the way to go for the next 10 or 15 years, while we make even better antennas that can pick up satellite communications, without having to have a 12-inch dish lying around.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you own a big company and you've got people traveling, and this is a good way of doing business, all you do is on the top of your building, you have a dish which links with the satellites and feeds it into the office.
Through Wi-Fi, for example.
Yeah,
and exactly. That works fine. And there's a lot of that right now with regular cellular communications. There's kits you can buy on Amazon that will create what's called a picocell, which is like a cell phone tower, but in a small way. And you can put it inside your office or warehouse or anywhere where cell phone signals don't travel well, and repeat both the voice and the data so that people can use it. And a similar system could be set up for buildings and other places to do that, or even for places like small towns out in the middle of nowhere that have no way to reach them using traditional fiber or whatever. They could just set up a dish, connect to the Starlink network, and distribute that signal with the rest of the people. Exactly.
Sure. No, absolutely. So, Rosanna, you started off a good debate there about, what is going to happen. That's Elon Musk's phone. I tell you what, I just want to touch on, because it did affect me. In actual fact, I communicated with you about it. All of a sudden, people were getting messages from me and they were saying, hey, have you just sent me a friend request? What have you? I said, no, I'm not. My Facebook Messenger account had been hacked. Firstly, how does it get hacked in the first place? And does that, if they have my messengers, does that mean they have access to my Facebook in general? And how do we get rid of it?
Well, there are two things that can happen when something like this happens. There's spoofing of your account by creating an account that looks a lot like yours and then trying to add people as friends and talk to them and so on. And this goes on a lot more than you think. If you look for a lot of your friends' names on Facebook, you might see repeated accounts that are not created by them and that are used precisely to do that, to ask people for money, saying, hey, I'm stuck in a Turkish prison and I need bail money or whatever. And they'll ask you to send Western Union or money transfers or even Yappy sometimes. So you have to watch out for that, because people might think your account is hacked. You might think your account is hacked. But the fact is, your account's not hacked. Somebody's trying to pass themselves off as you. But there are two ways where somebody can somehow get access to sending messages in your name using Facebook Messenger. One of them is if you allow any of the Facebook-based apps, and you might remember some of these from a long time ago when they were a fad, like Farmville or Mafia Wars or so many other like apps inside of Facebook. There's also websites that say, hey, in order for you to use me, you're going to have to allow me to post things on your behalf. If you allow a website to do that, and you can probably see a lot of people on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, posting messages such as, so many people followed me, so many people unfollowed me, get this information at soandso.com or whatever. Any of these apps that have access to your Facebook account, if they are hacked, or if the account you use to get into that is hacked, then somebody could use that to go into your account, which is why you should go into security and then applications that have permission on your Facebook account, and then look at the list. If there's one that you haven't used in a long time, if there's one that you don't know about or don't remember using, just deny the permission that you gave it. And if you ever need it again, it'll just ask again and you can tell it to do so. In fact, that's one of the new features of Android 11 and 12, that if you haven't used an application for a very long time, it automatically will take off permissions like camera and microphone and so on, which I think is a good thing. You can make your own exceptions and say never take the permission off, but then you have to do it consciously, which is a good thing. Now, another thing to do if you suspect somebody's using your messenger or whatever is to make sure that you're using multi-factor authentication. And that means that either Facebook or Instagram or whatever other medium we're talking about will not take just your password to log in. It will also ask you something else, like a number on an app that switches every 30 seconds or so. There's Google Authenticator for that. There's Microsoft Authenticator for that. I use one called Authy, that's spelled A-U-T-H-Y. That's something that you should have on all the accounts that support it. You can even put it on your website if you have your own website or whatever. So even if people find out what your password is, they can't get in without your permission. That being said, some places can only use a phone number, a text message to authenticate who you are. The problem with that is that a lot of people have prepaid phones that they got their SIM card from a store, and they never filled out their name or address or phone number or cedula or anything like that. What the problem with that is, somebody else can walk into a store and say, I lost my SIM card. My phone was stolen. Can you give me a new SIM card with this number? And they will say, oh, we didn't have your name here. Do you mind if we put your name here? And they take over your SIM card. A lot of people will say, oh, I got my SIM card cloned. That does not happen since at least 25 years ago because it's not clonable. Each one is individually marked, but they do get a new one made out in your name, and then they grab that number. So you have to be careful to have a phone that you don't mind having your name tied to for that. I, for one, for example, have a phone that's not the phone that everybody has with a different number, and it's been the same number for many, many years. And that's the one I use for my SMS authentication on things that require a text message. I don't use my actual phone. I use a separate phone number that nobody knows. So that even if somebody falsified the information and got a hold of a SIM card with my phone, they couldn't get into my accounts with that phone number.
So when because what I did was, if you go into Facebook and they have the search bar at the top, if you type in hacked, it will take you to instructions on what to do. First thing they tell you to do is go and change your password, which is what I did. I used a much stronger password than I'd had on it previously. And like you said, they said, okay, fine. We're going to, you have to use your Authenticator app to generate the number. Then you had to put that in before it would make the changes. And as soon as I did that, I shut the Facebook down, restarted it with the new password, and I hadn't heard a word from anybody since about any issues with the messenger. So hopefully that sort of nailed it. But it's worrying. One thing I don't do either is you have all these different accounts or whatever that you start up and say, do you want to sign in with Google? Do you want to sign in with Facebook? No, I don't use anything other than a separate username or password for any account. I use a password manager now, which I've been using for a few years, called Dashlane, which I find to be extremely good. I can get a hold of all my passwords on my phone. Now, by the way, they've been note, Alex, but they just stopped the app. They shut down their app on your computers, on your desktops. You now have to go through web browsers to get it. You get the extension for any web browser. And I found that to be very, very efficient, very, very effective. And they're always checking. They'll even check your email address to make sure that you've got no dark web uses for your email address, et cetera, et cetera. But
they even tell you if one of your passwords has been found in a database, if it's lost or stolen.
Yeah.
So yeah. Very, very highly recommended. By the way, I just looked for Jerry Dowden on Facebook. There's one Gerald Dowden somewhere, and there's a Jerry. Yeah, there's a Gerald. There's a couple of people with similar names, but not exactly. There's one Jerry Dowden who's a lumberjack somewhere.
Oh yeah, Gerald. No. It's up in Canada. There's because I've seen him for many, many years on not social media, but when I've done searches on the internet sometimes. He's up in, there's also, I think, a golf player as well that has a very, very similar name. Did you see any with my photograph?
No, not at all, which is good.
Yeah.
You know, one of these days when you go on vacation or whatever, it might be nice to see if we can get them to host the show. So it's still with Jerry Dowden.
And in actual fact, there was a BBC presenter called Jerry Dowden, and he presented a gardening program.
Oh, I don't think you have a green thumb, do you?
No, that's not really up my alley. So yes, we are around. We do exist. So anyway, look, we've come to the top of the hour. Very interesting morning. Big thanks again to Rosanna, and also, by the way, big thanks to everybody else that put in some suggestions. I think one of the reasons we went for that because it's out of the box. It's something which is starting possibly to come to fruition. And it was a very interesting. The other thing I think we'll touch on, which was suggested by somebody else, Alex, is the use of QR codes and what they actually do, and are they able to sort of obtain information from you? I personally not pretty sure about that, but that's something we can talk about perhaps next week.
Okay, we'll take that up next week. We'll talk about QR codes, what they are, how you can use them to your advantage, and and we'll take it from there.
All right. And Rosanna, we'll be in touch how you can get hold of your Huawei FreeBud 4 Eyes.
Congratulations.
That's, of course, if I can find them. I might have hidden them somewhere. All right, Alex, as always, thank you so very much. And we'll be back with you all being well next week.
See you next week. See you, Yasmin.
You can start recording now.
Okay.
The little